Welcome to Gaming the Podcast by Indie by Design. I'm John Robertson, and this week our very own Stace Harmon sat down with Double Fine's Tim Schafer to talk everything from the upcoming Psychonauts 2 to how new games are dreamt up. We are also using this opportunity to celebrate our completion of 20 Double Fine years, our book detailing the history, the games, culture, and creativity of everything Double Fine Productions. The whole thing is now finished. We and Double Fine have advanced copies in our possession. They look and feel fantastic, and we really can't wait to get them into your hands. You can find out more about 20 Double Fine years and get yourself a copy at doublefinebook.com, and you can find out more via our Twitter. We are at Indie by Design. That's doublefinebook.com and at Indie by Design. A quick note to say that the following interview has been left uncut from the original conversation in order to give you maximum insight and value. So I hope you enjoy it, and here's Tim and Stace.
Mr. Tim Schafer. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
So you are now at the end of a very long journey with Psychonauts 2. And
both of us are recently finishing very large projects. Congratulations to the two of us. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Cheers with the West Coast there. Is there one kind of predominant feeling or emotion that you have at the end of the development journey, at least, of Psychonauts 2? Of course, it's still got to come out and people still have to see it, but do you have one kind of overriding feeling now that you are kind of on the cusp of release?
I feel like I and the team are both very, very happy. I think that's the word we'd use, because it has been, a roller coaster, because we started this game as an independent, publisher, crowdfunding, and then having a publisher, and losing the publisher, and then having a publisher, and then losing the publisher. A lot of stress for the team, but everyone stuck with it and stayed together. And the fact that we're all landing, and we just had our first round of press that was extremely positive about the game. And that's always such a whew, we thought it was good, but who knows that these jokes are funny after 5 years. The general feeling on the team of like, wow, after all that hard work, that there's something we're really proud of, is just a really, really happy feeling. And having it nicely land, becoming part of Xbox and being able to get the funding we needed to really put the extra polish on the game, so that we're, not just scrambling to like patch up everything with duct tape and spit at the last minute, but like really finishing it off well, I think makes everyone feel really happy after a lot of hard work.
Well, that's good to hear. I think that's a nice emotion to be left with, isn't it? That you're happy. It's not just, oh, we were absolutely sick and tired of this game. My goodness. But no, it's good that you're happy. I'm pleased that you're happy. So that's a nice thing to be.
It's this is the kind of team that, like, near the end, they start to get even more like, wow, we worked this hard on the game, and I don't want to be ruined by this weird jittery thing over here, or this little detail. Like, it's like, out of respect for the past work we've done, we put a little more polish onto it,
Well, as I mentioned, I have been playing some of it, and we're going to avoid story spoilers, but I've been playing some of it recently. I've just finished the casino, so I'm kind of a couple of hours in.
Oh, wow.
And I'm very pleased about, and I'm a bit surprised, I think, about how much has already been packed in terms of the writing and what it's making me feel. So I kind of jotted down some notes earlier of the things that I felt as I've been going through it. And I've had, what have we had? We've had, so kind of straight out the bat, we have Raz dealing with expectation versus reality. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what that means, but I would imagine you probably know what I'm talking about.
He thought he was human. He turns out to be a robot. Right? That's Act 1 opener, right?
It turns out he's just a man in a troll suit.
Don't listen to this before the game launches.
Yeah.
The robot scene, right? No, great. No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then there's aspects of personal responsibility, there's shame, regret, ethical issues surrounding mind control. And one particular section, again, avoiding spoilers, was the, what would it be called? I guess the maternity segment, which was incredible. Honestly, I found it incredibly astute, and there were some very kind of biting and cutting observations of and there was some very sensitively observed observations as well of parenthood. And I wonder, how did the conversations surrounding the themes and the psychic abilities as well, particularly the mind control stuff, how did those conversations differ to the conversations that you might have had 20 years ago for the first game? Are you even able to recall those conversations from 20
Yeah, I don't remember having any discussions about the ethics in the first game. I think we were all ethical people and like got a lot of stuff right, hopefully just with good intentions. But I think that was the first game. We, was relatively speaking kids. Um,
Hmm.
but this summer, and there was definitely a lot of talk about like what is what is going into someone else's mind. It's like a very fraught
Hmm.
with a tough choices type of situation. And so I think we've and just people on the team, like I think in that maternity ward, there are characters in that room that voice things that people on the team have said.
Hmm.
There's just you draw when you're making a character, you draw on people and things they've said, and so they're not all expressing my views about stuff, but they're all
Sure,
expressing
sure.
the views of someone who we know in real life. Maybe not a specific person, but and that's the game doesn't really take a point of view on these things. It's not trying to
Mm.
lecture anybody on anything. It's just kind of like this is life. These are the people you might meet. Here's the things people say, and cause that's what life is like. It's fun to meet people. It's fun to hear all the different perspectives on things. So that's
Yeah.
reflected in the game, hopefully
Like
in an entertaining way.
we finally have a child. When does it start realizing our unfulfilled potential? It's like stuff like that, which is just amazing. Anyway, so alongside those, okay, because I remember when we spoke to Chris Brown, she was very, very serious. I think very intent on making it clear that there had been more of these conversations, and that there were conversations surrounding this notion of like the ethical consideration of going into somebody's mind and making them do things or coercing them effectively. And has there been things kind of, have you had those conversations, have those conversations surprised you? I suppose that's the question. Have you kind of thought that you kind of set on a particular scene or a particular way of writing a particular thing, and then somebody's come to you and said, well, like, have you considered this side of this, because this could seem a bit sketchy or a bit sensitive in some way?
Yeah, and you really rely on a really broad team, and that's one of the important things about having a diverse team and just having a lot of points of view. The catch can't catch everything, and I'm sure there are mistakes we made still, but they catch a lot of things, and I definitely have a lot of blind spots, and so it's really helpful to have. Chris catches a lot of it in the studio. Like this character says this term. This term really means. I'm like, no, I just say it. And he's like, and Chris will be like, here's what it means. Like, oh, whoa, and you just as you grow older, you always just you encounter new ways of what things mean to different people, things you hadn't really thought of, just terms you use since the sixth grade and you're just, never really thought about it. And you're like, well, here's the effect this might have on other people. And you can't say that you want to make art without thinking about the effect it has on people, because you're trying to generate emotions in people. And so if you're generating the wrong emotion from your intention, you want to know about that.
Mm, mm, absolutely. And it feels like it's kind of quite timely, because it feels like there's a lot more conversations at the moment about, or increasingly, I would say there's more conversations about mental health. And very recently, we've had the Olympics with like Simone Biles saying that she's stepping back for a moment because she needs to protect her mental health, which I thought was astounding. I thought it was an incredible thing to do. And the headlines were that, this could change conversations about mental health. And I thought, well, that's absolutely, because it takes somebody of that stature to make people realize that it's okay to have that as a priority. But then even beyond that, just the very basic way and the situation that we've been living in for the last 18 months, we've all had to deal with challenges in our professional and personal lives. And I wonder, working on the game that you have been working on with that touches on these notions, but also in the way that you've had to work on it for the last 18 months. You've had to work in lockdown as well, and you've had to work remotely. And has that tied in any way? Have you seen kind of an increased willingness to, either in yourself or in your team, to have those conversations? I mean, I understand that you're a very close-knit team anyway, so maybe that willingness was already there, but have you kind of been able to kind of surprise yourself in being more open to those conversations, or in instigating those conversations?
I think it just broader, maybe it's the games industry, maybe it's society at large, but like the destigmatization of talking about, going to therapy and things like that have made everyone feel a lot more comfortable talking about it. Like people are more comfortable saying things like my therapist, like the phrase that I don't think, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, definitely people would have been so easy to be like, well, my therapist. except for like, you know, I guess, I don't know. It's a lot. It's definitely in the air. I feel like it helps to have younger people on the team. I feel they're a lot more willing to talk about their struggles than even people of my generation, like Generation X is mostly like, your problems. You don't want to burden people with your problems. Like you're just yours to kind of suffer through or, just suck it up. And I do feel like there's value in resilience, and overcoming things. But I think there's also bravery in sharing struggles, right? And it's, it's like mutually therapeutic to people you're talking about. Like giving and taking of those kind of experiences allows everybody to feel like they're not alone and there's solutions to these problems.
Yeah. And hopefully that won't all go away when we are able to all get back together. And I know that's kind of opening up now. You guys were able to, I think Spaff mentioned that you guys were able to recently get together for your company birthday. Was that right? You were able to go back?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it was kind of like in a window where no one really knew much about the Delta variant. So we're kind of like, hey, quarantine's over. And we all got together. And then it was like, and then the city shut down again. So we're really lucky. I think we got through and no one got sick or anything like that. But we've been very careful, and it's been, we had an outdoor, mostly outdoor event, took precautions, and everyone was vaccinated, and so, been very careful, but it was frustrating to see it like start to come back to normal and then stop. And
yeah, we're not quite there just yet. Not just yet.
Yeah.
Well, so then here's the first of the kind of the throwback questions, because I was going through some of your old interviews, and this has to do with kind of a mental state, but it's in a slightly different way, because in a conversation that you had with Greg Miller last year, I think it was, Greg, who very kindly provided the foreword for our book, in fact, 20 Double Fine Years, which is available for pre-order from doublefinebook.com, by the way.
I don't know about this book. What's this book? Are you talking about some sort of 20-year anniversary book?
Yeah, well, we
thick and luscious and heavy.
We sneaked a few tape recorders into the office when everybody was in the office, and we just, we picked up a bunch of stuff. So you'll be delighted, I'm sure. It's coming soon. But when you were talking to Greg, you talked about how you likened, I think it was likening the workings of the human brain to taking a dog for a walk. And in that you're not entirely in control of your brain, and you can't always control where it goes. And sometimes you need to kind of pull it back from a certain place, or trying
Smelling
to do
a raccoon carcass.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And other times you're more free to let it explore. And I wonder if you can talk a bit about kind of the last time that you kind of slackened the leash on your own brain to let it explore, be that like a theoretical concept or a practical activity, either in your professional or your personal life. Like, when was the last time you kind of let your brain just wander and go and explore something new, I guess?
I mean, theoretically, I try to do it every day when I do my free writing, which is I've been really bad about. So it's kind of like exercise, like going to the gym.
Yeah.
So I have this notebook right over there. It's within arm's reach, and I could grab it and do it right after this interview. Maybe I will. I don't know, probably. But I've gone through periods of being really good about free writing. And, we've talked about this before. I don't know, but like opening a notebook and the rule is you have to pick an amount of time, and then you just have to stop. Never stop your pen the whole time. That, you just always keep writing, even if you're just writing nonsense. And nonsense, the same word over and over again, whatever, but you just have to keep writing, and it allows your brain to turn off its editor and turn off its sensor and just kind of verbalize all your thoughts. And it leads to really interesting kind of uncorking of your imagination, I find. And so that's where I do most of that exploration. And it also happens subconsciously during the day, like just watching a movie. Your brain's, I think any creative person is always putting together, like, why did I laugh just then? Why was I scared? Why am I feeling this? And why do I care about this character who's so unlikable? And then you start to analyze what happens. You're like, and then you naturally start to think like, I wonder if I could make a character like that. I wonder if that was fun when I thought the character was good and they turned out to be bad. And I wonder if I could add that to a story. You start to your brain starts to automatically in the background, like put these things together. And the next time you go to write something, you have these ideas floating around. But also, I think David Lynch talks about sitting in a chair in a room just fishing. Like you're just sitting there, like there's this river of thoughts going by. And you're just kind of casting out your line, and you're just trying to catch ideas. And ideas are just so fun to catch when you get one. So it's like that. It's just you're just turning off all your critics, your judges. Because those are useful later when you're trying to craft something, for sure. And edit as an editor, it's really important to be ruthless at some point. But there's also a point where you're just like, anything goes mentally, and you're just letting it all pass through you.
And have you had, you mentioned there about like when you are watching other media and you'll start to think about why was that funny, or why did that character do that? Do you do you come from a certain school of thought? I've heard authors, like book authors, talk about how sometimes their characters take them to unexpected places, and they just have to let them go there, and these kinds of things. Do you have that? Have you ever had like characters that you had a certain thought or opinion about, and then you find through writing them that they turn out to be something else, or are you kind of just they go where you tell them to do, which is the sort of which is your more natural
No,
bent?
it's the first thing where you kind of figure out the backstory, you kind of figure out who they are, and then when you're writing it, it's like you're improvising on stage. You're kind of like improvising the dialogue based on who you feel like they are in your gut, and it goes into all kinds of places. You're always surprised. I remember Manny Calavera and he's talking to Membrio, the coroner in Grim Fandango. And I'm not a very religious person, but Manny started talking about like having faith and like following these things. Like you've got to have some like the march to the 4-year journey of the soul. He started talking about why he does it, and it sounded like this testament to having faith in things. I was like, where is that coming from? It's just coming from Manny. Like that just comes from like Manny's point of view. It didn't feel like something I would personally say, but it just made sense for him to say it. And so I think that's hopefully what you're always reaching for. Because if every character was just you, it'd be really boring. And you, you know what I mean? But if you're going to write like a villain, it doesn't mean that comes from your villainous thoughts, but it comes from you being able to like put yourself in the mind of someone who has that point of view, and what would they say?
So does that, like, if you were to give tips to somebody in creating characters, is there more of a kind of sort out their backstory, establish what they do and don't like, and the rest will come to an extent? Or is it, do you kind of find who they are through writing their dialogue?
Both.
Okay.
I definitely try to come up with some backstory of like, where do they go? Like, were they raised with both parents? Are they rich? Are they poor? Like what's their background? What part of the world do they come from? Just something that would give you a sense of knowing that character. But then it's not until they put the words together that you really figure out what they will commit to, because there's who they are and their backstory, and then it's what they present to the world and who they want to be, and like what mask they want to wear when they're around other people, and how that mask changes depending on who they're with. That makes all the dialogue interesting.
And does that ever lead you to kind of challenging those characters? Do you kind of like, in order to find out what they stand for or where the line is drawn, do you kind of create, if not gameplay situations, then kind of narrative situations that to kind of test that, to find that out? Is that like a find that out through exploring, I guess, is what I'm asking, that's the basic knowing up front.
Yes, we do. Like just the basic act of coming with a basic story comes from challenging. It's not, if you just had a hero, what's the hero want? Oh, they want to make all these good things happen. Well, and they did. And that was it. And that was the end of the story. Like nothing interesting comes unless you create an antagonist who's going to be like, I'm going to be thwarting everything this person does, or I'm just taking my own path, and it's in conflict with yours. And, putting together stories about like, sometimes, well, if depending on what kind of story you want to have, a lot of the drama comes from, well, let's put some opposition in the face of this hero's path, and when they try to overcome it, do they have to make really terrible choices, or and then that choice is going to tell you about that character, and then do they have a certain style with which they overcome problems? That's going to tell you about that character, and then if they fail, how do they react to that? And that's how you learn about the characters, is by throwing these different, maybe opposing characters or opposing situations to them that really, really test them.
So along those lines, so something that is often a staple of many video games is conflict in the sort of theoretical and the literal sense of the word. There's often combat. I noticed in Psychonauts 2, there's the option, I think it's called narrative combat. I think, is that what the option is? That you basically, it makes the game less challenging so you can enjoy the story. And I wonder, has your kind of personal approach to playing games, the kind of games that you play, or the way that you play games, has that changed over the years? Do you find yourself drawn to more narrative experiences rather than things that are directly challenging your dexterity, say? Is that like a thing that's changed throughout your career?
I mean, I think they're different. They're different gameplay experiences that I'm still drawn to both. I've been getting into retro game type things and playing my old Atari games, and I've actually started getting more into like, I wonder if I can get a higher score on this really like 40-year-old game. I wonder if I can get better at it now. Like so I'm actually in some ways more interested in that kind of mastery type situations. And I also am interested in like just it's more about allowing the player to enjoy the game in the way they want. And especially narrative based games, they reach a lot more people than games. They reach people that games that narrative don't reach. And why block those people from enjoying the game is the question. So why not just let them enjoy the game they want to, let them like it the way they want to like it.
Mm. Mm. Well, that ties into a conversation you had a while back with Amy Hennig, in which the topic came up about the language that's used when talking about games, just the language that's used kind of in the discourse about games and about how we try to beat them, and how there's a very much like a conquering kind of mindset for a lot of people with games. And do you when you're approaching an initial sort of design document, or when you sit down to think about a game, does that come up in terms of what kind of game? Is it a score attack game? Is it this game? Like where typically does it start for you? Like, does it come from a mechanic, or does it come from like I want to make a game about, or I want to make a game that is?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it usually starts with the world of like, I want to make a game set in this world, and I want to draw the player into this world and take them on a journey through this world. So, and that leads to a question of like, who would you want to be if you're in that world? What suit would you want to wear when you're walking through that world? And then who would oppose you in that world? So those are like the steps of kind of creating the framework for a story. And gameplay mechanics are I feel like it's all like a bag of tricks that you pull from in order to make someone want to stay in your world. Although I think about mechanics more as I've been playing a lot of older games lately, because I think they're really important, but I feel like I've mostly been focused on the narrative side and let other experts work on the mechanical. But I've had thoughts about it that I've really started to develop more lately. So I think it's all important. It's all part of the mix of making an immersive experience.
And it feels like that ties very directly into something that you've said previously about like Double Fine being first and foremost creativity led. Like that's the focus. That's the sort of raison d'etre. That's the point of it all. And I wondered, off the back of what is it now, 5 or 6 years that Psychonauts 2 has been in 5 years that it's been in development.
I'll check the facts later.
Are you able yet to look forward to starting that process again? I mean, maybe you've already started that process again, but are you able to look forward yet to like, how does your process kind of end, your creative process on a project? Do you jump straight into another thing? Do you need time to just do nothing? Like, how do you kind of...
Oh, they always overlap. I've been thinking about my next game for years, and I've been thinking about... Sometimes when you're in crunch mode, it's the best time to think about something else, because your brain's like, anything but this game. Not that we're in crunch mode, but I mean like that finish, like when you're the most busy on a project, often your brain would be like, what about this other project you could be working on? It's good to take those notes, but the next couple games that I want to make, I always think about them for 10 years, I think, before I ever make them. So it's nice to be able to sit around, and nice and also intimidating, because as soon as I get time to think about the next thing 100% of the time, that's when next thing around the corner is someone asking for it. Like, oh, you're working on that. When's that first document going to be ready? And you're like, So actually, while you're working on something else, it's a great time to be pretty private and alone with your next game idea, because no one's they're always asking you for this game. So I can be quietly working on something.
There's no discussion about milestones for the next project just yet. Leave that for a little while. No more sticky notes on the board for milestones just yet. I mean, that you mentioned there actually that game ideas can be years in the making. I mean, Brutal Legend, I remember you talking about that being I think it's fair to say it was decades in the making. Was it? Or the ideas for that, kind of where that came from.
Yeah, different parts of it came at different times. Like the title came, I think I was riding a bus in San Rafael while I was working at LucasArts, and was just thinking about what the most ultimate title would be for the kind of games I didn't make. Like we're making games about pirates and stuff. Like you're up against all these, Neverwinter Nights and stuff. It's like I can out Neverwinter Nights. Brutal Legend.
Yeah, the foil to Day of the Tentacle or The Secret of Monkey Island. Yeah, definitely is Brutal Legend. I mean, that's with an umlaut as well. I mean, for sure. And that's so. Yeah, and in talking about Brutal Legend, I think it was something that we talked about. I want to go back all the way to last February, which seems like a lifetime ago, in which and I think you've talked about it elsewhere, but you talked about that it seemed like I think you explained it as the people that you sit down with and play Brutal Legend with, or that you show how it works, or that perhaps they do Rocktober with you every year. Those are the people that then come to understand and love Brutal. But the people that don't get it or don't get to have that introduction are like, those are the people that fall off it quicker. And I think you talked about the tutorial element to it, and it would have been nice to have been able to have made that a bit more robust so that more people could enjoy it. And I wonder, like, where do you think? Because on the other end of that, you've also talked about how the games that delight you personally are ones that are kind of slightly confusing or slightly surprising. Or yeah. And so, like, where, I'm not sure if you can even describe it as a place, but where's the sweet spot, do you think, between the kind of typical tutorial experience that sands off all the edges and doesn't let you, is very scared to let you get something wrong, and the other end of that, which is kind of the people who want to explore and they want to find those things out for themselves because it makes them feel smart. Like, do you know what, are you able to sum up what that sweet spot looks like or feels like, or like how do you get there?
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, I would allow people are welcome to not like one of their games. I'm not saying they're wrong if they don't like the games, but I feel like definitely a lot of games you get a very short period of time to get people to like it or not. And once people just hear buzz about something, they can really write it off without knowing trying it. But I think figuring out how much you can confuse or surprise an audience is like the whole like fine tuning of any game. And that's what every puzzle design in an adventure game is. Like, okay, here's a hard puzzle. How hard do we make it? And it's like the goal is to always have it be that writing that line where they're kind of frustrated, but they know, like, the game's winking at them and telling them, like, the answer. It's right around the corner. It's on the tip of your tongue. If you could just say it out loud, just think a little harder. Like you're making that kind of like the game, make it entertaining for you to be confused and to make you feel like if you just stretched or gave it a little more time, you could do it. That's the pleasant kind of confusion that makes the best games. But not everyone's on that same curve. So catching everybody in that is really the challenge. And there's no one right answer to that for sure.
And are those the games that so do you enjoy those games that you find creeping into your brain when you're not playing them? You'll go away and make a cup of tea and this thing will pop into you. Oh, that's what it is. Are those the
like
kind of games?
Those are like adventure games, but even like the one that like most finely crafted ones of these, like Limbo, like the first time I played Limbo or Inside, I was just amazed by every time I was about to quit in frustration. I was like, this puzzle, I do not get it. What you can do. Oh, wait a second. Like right then would be the moment where I would get it. And I was like, how do they tune this thing so well? And they were like, well, we just spent years and years testing and polishing it. So that just is the proof. There's no theoretical answer to that. Like you just got to watch people play it and see where they get frustrated and think about what could you put there? What little signpost or whatever would catch that player and just give them a little hint towards the right direction, not a solution, but. And the hardest thing is convincing everyone else on the team and the publisher and everybody to put a hint in instead of just a solution. Because a lot of people are just concerned that the player will get mad and stop playing the game and not buy the next game or whatever. And everyone wants let's just put a pop-up that just tells you what to do here. And then we make sure every player gets to enjoy their software product they're making for them. And I'm like, what if we just put a hint on like a controller vibration right here? Like you want to put in the least amount of hint that would then test it again and see if everyone gets it,
Yeah. I mean, is that like, what is, Do you know why are people scared of that? Do you think is that like because we're fighting? There are so many games, and we're fighting for people's attention as it is, and so if we give a reason for people to walk away, they may never come back. Like, is that a? Because I mean, to be blunt, it's like they've already bought the game at that point, right? So you've already got their money in the most mercenary type way. Like, so why do people why are people worried about that at that point?
There's so many choices. There's so many they could put down your game, and I don't know. Now it's on Game Pass. Like there's a million games on Game Pass. I could try something else. You want them to finish your game, but I think it's partially that, but it's also the process that I just described is very long and tedious and frustrating because you have a big meeting. Oh, players got stuck here, and there's this choice that works. Let's put up a pop up that says "Look behind you," or and you're like, "Wow, what if we just put a little more light on this thing, or maybe a little sparkle on the handle of this door?" And they're like, "Oh," and then you put in a test, and like people didn't even look at the sparkle, and they're like, "Okay, what if the doormat was jiggled a little bit or something dumb?" And you don't know that it'll work. You test it doesn't work, and people get just put the pop up. Come on, so because if you're worried about the schedule, that it's a much less risky thing to do. The more explicit solution. But I feel like if you have the time, it's always better to just do something a little more inside the fantasy of the game.
But do you ever have time? I suppose that's like you always run out of time, or one, not you, but one always runs out of time. You can't quite do everything.
That's why you got to do so much testing early on.
Right.
It's just that all those things have done right give the opportunity for the player to feel clever. If they can just make that last leap, no matter how small it is, aha. Did you notice that this doorknob is shiny right here on this, or this book is a little less dusted? And they just feel anything clever about the choice they made, then they feel so much better about that experience. And if you put a pop-up, you're taking that little moment of cleverness away from them. Just feel like they're just doing what the game tells them to do. Okay.
Well, that unexpectedly actually ties into something from Psychonauts 2. In the vaguest way, what can I say? So there's a couple of instances where it feels like you are allowed to go down what becomes a dead end, and you go there for a reason. You'll go there to find a collectible, or to find a power up, or to some intern badges to spend to power up. But it made me realize that there's not. That seems to have gone away a lot. It seems like the notion of you go down this path, you retrieve a thing, and then you come back the way that you came doesn't seem to be that common anymore. It seems to be like there needs to be this sort of circuitous route to get you back to where you were. Was that? I mean, is any of that kind of thing intentional in saying yes, it's okay to let people go here? It's not like they've gone here for nothing. They've got kind of this payoff. And now they're going to come back they're going to come back a short way and come back to where they started to go off down a different path. Like, is that a kind of a purposeful thing? Is that a deliberate thing?
I would love to ask that question of our level designers or our lead designer, Seth Marinello. Like, what is that a conscious thing? I think a lot of the way that some of those things are designed, right? The level designer will think of like, I'll put a special optional path here and to hide this collectible. And sometimes we just find these little nooks and crannies, and you're like, hey, I walked all the way back here. There was a ledge, and I got behind this thing, and there was nothing here. And it's like, okay, I'll stick something back there. So some are on purpose, and some are afterthoughts. And I don't really. Personally, for me, when they do loop back in like a circuitous route, now you got me.
It's trickier to say.
Like if you have a little side path that then makes back into the main path, you can often like not find the first exit and then find where it hooks back up and then take it backwards and then get really confused.
Yeah.
So I'll just speak for level designers, but that's maybe what I would worry about.
Well, but it feels like in some ways it makes the world more not alive, but the what's that word? I use it a lot, but I can never say it properly. The verisimilitude of the world is increased, I think, because it doesn't always feel like, oh, this is designed purely for me. Like the only reason this is here is for me to go down this route and come around here and do this. It feels like this is a place, like the HQ. It feels like, oh, this is a place that exists and I'm just kind of here visiting and exploring. And I think that enhances the feeling if anything, for me, rather than.
But I like when the game does put something there at the dead end, like when these little. I like for the game to tell the player like, we see you sneaking. We know you went behind the book, and look here. Oh, here's a little treat. Clever. This is a way to like. I think people like it when the game knows they're being clever and knows they're being sneaky and finding little nooks and crannies.
That's. I think that ties to something. I think when you've talked about like adventure game writing, and you've said that you want to write that line for somebody who tries a very obscure combination of items, and it's like, well, it can't just be like, nope, that's wrong. It has to be like, you have to give them.
It's such an easy opportunity to like that make the player feel seen.
And I think they're appreciated. It feels a bit like, so there was a lot of things when we were putting the book together that we had conversations, me, John, and our layout designer, Richard, had conversations back and forth about very specific things like, so these bits of art, should we leave the paper texture in here, or should we remove that because it blends better with the rest of the page? Should we, put these bits next to each other because there's this texture and this texture kind of look a bit strange? And they were things that it felt like, and we said more than once, like, these are very specific, minute details. Or let's use this border color. We'll be like, oh, we'll use the double fine orange here, and then we'll complement it with the yellow somewhere else. But they felt like very specific things that in isolation, perhaps very few people will notice. But the idea of them is that they all add up and they create this thing that is, hopefully, feels special. And I wondered if that is anything like making a game, like you're focusing on these details that in isolation maybe nobody will see that dead end collectible. Nobody will hear that line that you've written, but that added up, that kind of like, is it as simple as that? Is that just what a video game is? It's just a collection of these small moments, and then you put them all together, and hey presto.
There definitely is a bunch of a million small little details, but it's also, there are many layers of which things work, and some is very high level, like the concept of going into people's minds and these choices you make about big grand strokes, and then there's these middle layers of structure and level structure and plot points and stuff like that, and then you get down to these little moments that maybe an animator or a gameplay programmer or somebody can put in just a little touch that makes it a little more delightful, but also sells the entire theme of what you're doing so much better. So you have to fire on all these different levels, and that bottom level of the details, like everyone on the team touches it, and everyone adds something unique, cool, that often will surprise me when I'm playing through and really find really entertaining to discover new secret things in our game that we worked on for 5 years.
Well, yeah, that's like, I mean, I presume you've played it through many times, but do you get to, how do you get to play it? Do you play it, you're playing it with an eye to finding what's working and what needs to be tweaked, but like, have you yet got to experience it as just a player? Are you allowed to experience it like that?
Yeah, each time I play it, I find myself in the mind of like, okay, what does a player know? And I'm able to like, watch the scenes and feel like, wow, you really don't know about this character until, in the early days, we would add things of like, Raz is talking about this thing that he doesn't really seem to know yet. And then we'd have to make little corrections like that. But I'm still trying to play it differently every time. Like this last time I was playing it more completely. Like I'm going to get 100% and everything. That helps you find things. I found little closets and hidden rooms in the game this last playthrough I didn't know were in the game. So, how you approach it definitely affects what you find.
So do you think there's an outside chance then that the entirety of Psychonauts 1 might be playable in Psychonauts 2? Is that a thing?
That's not happening.
Is there a door somewhere or a computer terminal that you can just sit there and play?
No, we don't have to do that because Psychonauts is on Game Pass, so we don't have to do that.
There we go. Perfect segue. So, okay, let me just, there's a couple of other things here that I would like to get to. So, excuse me. Something you've mentioned previously is that one of the things that you were less than thrilled or somewhat apprehensive about starting a company was the little details like the toilet paper and the copy paper, like where are these things coming from? And I wonder if you can cast your mind back a while, not that far, but a while, to the projects that you've worked on at Double Fine where you're not leading them and you're coming in and perhaps you're writing the cutscenes or you're looking at, you have effectively a kind of a much smaller part, a bit part effectively. Do those instances where you work on those projects in that way, does that feel anything like what it felt like when you were at Lucas and your job wasn't to run a company and to be responsible for where the toilet paper and where the copy paper was coming from? Like, is it a similar feel? Is it completely different because it's your own company? Like, are they in any way comparable?
They're really different in that when I pop in and just write someone's cutscenes on a game that I'm not running, I feel like it's a really low stress situation because I'm just helping out and I don't have to worry about making it happen. That's somebody else's job. And so that's a big, like a vacation for me. I think that's great. But even when Lucas, when I wasn't, when I was working for someone else, I was still like, okay, this game, make or break, we got to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that stuff, it turns out it's not that hard to buy toilet paper, copy paper. It's just starting a company. You have to make that leap to like, okay, I'm going to figure out everything. And then you find out, California law says you have to do this with your employees. You're like, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of these things to learn, but none of it is, it's all figure outable.
Yeah. None of it's insurmountable. You can just buy toilet paper. And I imagine California law probably suggests that you
they
should.
Suggest you do. Yeah. They do.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough, I guess. Okay. So 2 last things, I think. The first of which is, have you had a chance yet to read through any of the book that you were holding in your hand earlier? Have you read all of the lovely things that people have said? People that both work full time at your company and kind of contributors as well. Have you? And I wondered.
I read through the whole thing. I think I read everything before it because
you did. I mean, pretty certainly. Yeah, in one of the previous drafts, and I don't think much, if any, of the writing has changed. But how does that? Yes, as again, put you on the spot. How does that make you feel to reflect? And I suppose this whole past year, the whole kind of 20th anniversary up to now, and I know that you've done a lot of interviews and talking about 20 years and your own 30 years in the industry. How does that make you feel to have achieved that? To have achieved 20 years running your own company? Like, can you sum that feeling up? Can you put it in a bottle?
Super conceited. Just really raked him. I just really think I'm better than everybody. I know. I feel, extremely lucky, obviously, and because it has been a roller coaster. We've come close to it not happening, maybe 3 times or more. And, really grateful for the people we've met along the way that have made it happen. And, the fact that we're able to point to multiple people without whom we would not exist, it shows how many people it takes to make something happen, and we've met a lot of great people along the way that have made it, both creatively, business-wise, technically, financially, just people who have contributed to making this thing exist in the world. We are very proud of, just because I think it's a good thing. Like, I think it's a good group of people who put good things out into the world, and we were able to, help people get their cavities filled along the way, and get their eye care taken care of, I made this not a big deal in your country because the government, I don't know, it's bigger. It's like we have to provide, anyway, I'm getting off track, but it's just that we're able to think about the quality of life of the people making the games and learn about that while we made things that hopefully will matter to people, like the way that art and books and everything mattered to me growing up, in games, obviously. To be able to put something into the world that someone will, that might be someone's favorite game, might be something that really, really matters to someone and means something to them and makes them think about becoming, if not a game developer, maybe something else creative in their life, or, it causes some sort of emotional development or anything like that. We just feel very, very fortunate to be able to have had that opportunity.
Awesome. I think that's probably a perfect end, actually. I think that's a very nice summing up.
We're not over, by the way. We're not shutting down. We're still going. The perfect end to the interview, not the company.
Not the company. I mean, we figured we got to, you're now at 21 years. I mean,
the perfect end to the company is we buy all of the companies.
Can shut all the doors and turn the lights off now. Yeah. You can go and live on a yacht with
No.
I don't know, the other people, Brian Fargo and the like. You can go live on a yacht with those guys. Yes, no, I think that's everything, Tim. That was awesome, and it actually sounds like my neighbour is just like cutting their lawn, so it's probably.
I thought that was your ending music. That you're playing me off. I thought that was your. Well, that's it.
Thank you for listening. Now, before you go, I just want to remind you one more time that you can learn more about and secure your copy of 20 Double Fine Years at doublefinebook.com. The first print run has now been completed, so act fast if you want one of those first edition copies, as they won't last forever. Again, that's doublefinebook.com. Also, you can follow us on social media. We are at Indie by Design across all platforms. And if you visit our Twitter, then there you'll also find a link to our Discord server. Next week's podcast is all about historical accuracy in games, and a discussion around that initially centres on the upcoming 4X title Humankind, which we have played an awful lot of and have a lot to say about. Until then, though, goodbye, stay safe, and we'll see you again next week.